Good afternoon, everybody. So great to be here and with two great panelists. So I think today we'll start a discussion. The first thing I'd like to ask is actually our two panelists to introduce what they do. They do exciting things with mobility, both with data and also looking at technology, hardware and software, Jan and Deepak. So we'll start from that. We'll have a bit of conversation, but really then open it up. Let's take this, we've got around an hour. Let's take this more as a way to interact and learn from each other. So I would ask Deepak first. I think, I was quite amazed about first of all, how you got into mobility, coming from other fields, and then how you tackle a very interesting, specific Indian problem in a very innovative way.
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deepak Garg. I'm the founder and CEO of Rivigo. I worked with McKinsey before starting Rivigo in 2014. The idea started from a very simple but a very complicated problem, which is no one wants to become a truck driver in this country. No one wants to become a truck driver in this country. It's not an India-specific problem. I would extend and say it's a global problem. No one wants to become a truck driver anywhere in the world. It's such a poor lifestyle job. A truck driver spends months away from home, poor conditions, away from his family. In India, 40% of them have HIV. 25% of them don't get married. So they stay away from their kids and family and don't get married. And therefore they lose social respect and they connect to the social ecosystem. In India, they're famously called as a 37th caste. India has 36 castes and is called an outcast. And it's a big problem because as a country, we need over the next 10 years, 1 million truck drivers every year. And I healthily challenge people to find me even 10 guys who want to be truck drivers. By the way, it's not just an India problem. Australia does not have truck drivers. They pay $200,000 to a truck driver. South Africa does spousal driving. US, everyone knows, have 6-figure truck driver salaries. There is a hope of autonomous vehicles solving this whole issue, but right now there is a big issue of anyone becoming a truck driver. It's a Brazil problem, it's a China problem. So it's a global problem. And we started with a very simple idea, which is called as relay trucking, where we said, can we create this cycle into a virtuous cycle and try to get drivers back home the same day? If you are able to get back home drivers the same day, he'll be connected to the social ecosystem with his family, with his kids. Hopefully he'll get married, he'll have less substance abuse, he'll not visit commercial sex workers, he'll have a healthy life, he'll probably gain respect in the social system. So start a tech company, the idea got seeded in a human problem. Eventually we had to build a lot of data and technology to scale this thing up, because when you do driver relay, you have to manage asset accountability. The transit times actually shortened significantly. Delhi to Bombay we do 24 hours, it was earlier done in 5 days. Delhi to Bangalore we do 44 hours, earlier it was done in 10 days. So we started connecting markets faster, right? So it's a myth that Indian truck driving average is, or whatever, is 200 kilometers. We do trucking at 1,000 kilometers a day, right? And hopefully we can do it at 1,500. So we started this 3 years ago, built it into a reasonable enterprise over the last years, built in a lot of data and technology and innovation to scale this up. We do believe this is the future of trucking, at least in the emerging markets, and hopefully it fits in very well into the autonomous vehicle trucking, where it can de-skill the role of a guy who will probably sit in the truck with that in that environment. So that's what we.
Thank you, Deepak. And we'll get we'll explore this much more in detail. That's very interesting. What I thought was very exciting was how you took this problem, especially in the India specificity, and then use technology to address it. And ultimately, a lot of the exciting things we are seeing around today, the discussion, and we're seeing in general in the tech sector, is really when you in the end look at something that changes people's lives. I think that for you, that was the starting point. Technology is just a way to have an impact. Impact at the social and human level. But going to Jan, you come from a different company, a company that's been around for a long time, one of the main powerhouses in terms of mobility all over the world. It would be great to hear from you first of all, about what you're passionate about today and how you see this issue about modernizing infrastructure, especially in India.
Okay, yeah, thank you. In fact, so Bosch is a dinosaur in the mobility solution area, one could tell. And while since decades we were in a verticalization world with products for fuel injection equipment, with active safety equipment, be it ABS or anti-skidding systems, we are going beyond that. So the product is still in the center, but we will be offering far more services that come necessary. So just to give one example, we launched with one very well-known OEM in Stuttgart the first car parking house where you can leave your car and it's driving automatically and finding his own spot. So these will be solutions that are going far beyond what we are offering today. I'm the CTO of Bosch Limited here in India, so the Chief Technical Officer, and beyond I'm responsible for the mobility solutions here and heading what we call the diesel system, so everything around diesel fuel injection equipment here in India. And I'm here in India since 10 months. Yeah. Living in Bangalore, and I experience mobility solutions in Bangalore, or the immobilization of the mobility, if you will. So just to give you a number, in India or in Bangalore we have around 70 lakhs, so that's 7 million cars moving or not moving. And daily, if you spend an hour in traffic, you can reckon that you have 50 minutes of time standstill. So it's not moving the car. That means that if you just multiply that with the fuel consumption, you spend more than 100,000 liters of fuel blowing just in the air. That is, I'm a little pathetic about that because you were asking me about my passions. To me, that's a crime. That's a crime to the environment, but it's also a crime to the economy. And that is what we are passionate about, to offer solutions for that.
And we'll get to the solutions in a moment. But before I had a question, and the question is, your title of President for Diesel Systems these days is not popular. Not popular because many cities, think about Paris and other cities around the world, are saying actually they're going to ban diesel systems. At the same time, we've also heard over the past couple of years about the Dieselgate. So diesel has been very successful actually in cutting down consumption over the past few decades, especially with the common rail that I think Bosch got the patent from Fiat, and then developed. And how do you see then the future of diesel now that's under so much pressure? Because there seems to be a big change. At one point a few years ago, people thought that might have been the direction instead of electrification, but now things have changed.
Thank you for that question, because it is also something what is make me really passionate about. And I can see that you are from Italy because you know that we bought this patent from Fiat. So I start with a statement that it's currently a very emotional discussion. It's not anymore a discussion on facts and figures about the diesel or the Dieselgate, if you even will, what is happening in Europe and what is leading now politicians to take decisions like banning the diesel from entering into the cities. If you just look on the simple facts, it is still a truth that a diesel is consuming in the range of 15 to 20% less fuel than a gasoline engine. So, and that you can translate directly into the emission of CO2, and we all know that CO2 is one of the big drivers for the climate change. Now, with regards to India, India is now in a real transformation epoch, if you will, for the diesel. Or not only for the diesel, because it's also affecting the gasoline engines. You just move into what we call Bharat Stage 4 here, which is similar to Euro Stage 4. It's an emission legislation just been introduced the 1st of April this year. And you will leapfrog here in India to Bharat Stage 6 in just from now on 3 years. So April 2020, you will have to have Euro Stage 6 implemented. And that is a huge contributor to two things. First, air quality, specifically in the cities. And second, of course, what is driving a lot here, the Indian politics of the question on the import of fuel, because again, you have a benefit in the consumption.
So now let me ask a question to both of you. And let's look at 10 years from now, and let's take the 7 million vehicles in Bangalore. What is it, 7 lakh?
70 lakh.
Okay, 70 lakh. I'm still getting familiar, getting used to the Indian numbering system. So out of them, 10 years from now, is it going to be, what's the relationship between diesel, between gasoline, between electric? What do you think, Deepak? How do you imagine that future?
Let me step back. And and first talk about where I see we are going, right?
No, but let's look at this. Let's look at just at this. Is your future electric for your trucks?
So I mean,
Tesla
just 2-3 things, right? One, I think the cost of solar is going down and down, and we are very close to a point where solar will be cheaper than anything else. Right? Not many people know that the amount of 99% of the energy on Earth is actually solar energy, right? The per square feet energy which is getting generated here is actually 99% of the solar energy, right? So I do believe that solar will have a huge role to play, converted in many forms in terms of mobility and converting into the mobility infrastructure. So I don't know whether it is 10 years in India. I've had debate with a lot of people, OEMs particularly. Their best case is between 2025 and 2030, at least in case of commercial vehicles. Now, when their best case is 2025 and 2030, I'm assuming you can add maybe 5-10 more years to that. So I think, but the trend is very clear from regulators to OEMs to buyers to everyone. We want a clean, green technology of mobility.
So if I understand correctly, in 2027, Tesla just announced a big truck that's supposedly is going to be sold in 2019. That's what Elon Musk said just a couple of weeks ago. So in 2027, your platform will mostly run electric trucks, if I understand correctly. What do you think? Yeah.
So our assumption is that in the range until 2025, 2030, we have for pass cars and light duty vehicles in the range of 15 to 20% fully electrified vehicle globally. Having said that, that means that the majority will still be fueled or fired by an ICE, so an internal combustion engine, be it now diesel or be it gasoline. But what we will see is a far bigger range of hybridization. So unfortunately here in India, the politics have currently, I would not say banned, but having deteriorated a lot the situation for the hybrids.
Yeah. So I would say both of you, however, agree that the direction is certainly setting towards electrification. Let's look at something else actually could actually create some troubles to your business model. And then the other thing is, I know that Bosch is one of the main developers of self-driving systems. You just mentioned about what you did with the famous Stuttgart company. I believe it's Mercedes. Can we say it?
We can say it.
Yeah. So about the self-parking car, and self-parking is the first step to self-driving. So how do you see that in 2027? And also, we know that today the self-driving problem has been solved. If you go up to a certain speed, with a certain complexity of the environment. Well, there's no doubt that the environment in terms of complexity or driving complexity is slightly higher here than, say, on a highway in the United States. So I think, how do you see that issue, self-driving landing on the roads in India versus landing on the roads in California?
Okay. There's a huge difference, of course. But you rightly said, Carlos, there are 4 drivers for the mobility. The first one is connected. The second is automated. The third one is shared. And the fourth is electrified. And electrified, I would not limit it now to the question, is it a battery, is it a hybrid, is it a fuel electric vehicle? But you can also think about things like synthetic fuels. Maybe we can elaborate a little later on that one. But coming to your question on automated driving. So in Europe and in the US specifically, I see a high probability for platooning. There's a very nice movie with one of my famous actors where you can see this already in the War of the Worlds. Those platooning vehicles, commercial vehicles driving on the highways in the US. For India though, that will be a far, far bigger challenge because simply the infrastructure is not deployed.
So you see a future when we'll get to totally self-driving in India as well, but you think it might take a bit longer. How much longer? 5 years longer?
Now again, if you speak about automated drivings, you have different levels.
Let's say actually for all of us, for those of the highest level, level 5. Level 5, you don't need a driver anymore. You can really do anything else. So when do you see actually level 5 arriving in the US, and what would be your prediction about level 5 arriving to India?
I think that for level 5 in the US, you are kind of already more than exploring that. You have robo-taxis from many companies currently not crawling, but really driving on the roads. And I would say that that is something that we will see very soon in the range of 2025 to 2030. It's depending on the policymakers, not so much on the question of the infrastructure here. In India, it's depending on both. It's depending on the policy and the infrastructure. So my gut's feeling is more for level 5, at least 1 to 2 decades longer.
So Deepak, before your prediction about electrification might put Jan's out of business, at least as part of his title about diesel. But now he's saying that actually you started by saying that you wanted to do something for truck drivers and saving more of them. But we are hearing now that you might not need any truck driver anymore just a few years from now.
So very interesting debate, and had this debate with a lot of guys who are working at the cutting edge of autonomous vehicle technology. I think first of all, self-driving, the core reason of self-driving is safety. Because it leads to job losses and many other things. I think safety is the biggest reason why the world is excited about autonomous vehicles. There is no other reason, right? Let me make an assertion. Relay technology, because it's descaling the job, but adding a lot of automation to this whole trucking technology, will in 18 months, we'll prove it in India, will cross the safety measures of a self-driving truck, which is probably one safety incident per 10 or 15 million kilometers. I think it can. So there is a level between level 1 and level 5, which is highly assisted driving, which actually kills the entire safety debate, right? That's one. Two, whenever I talk to senior technology leaders who are at the cutting edge of this technology, when I ask them how much time will it take, I heard a very precise number from the head of innovation from UPS. They have the largest fleet of trucks, and he said 17 years. We both laughed at 17 years because it sounds highly precise, right, in terms of, and I said, how? So he basically said, many people predicted it, I just simply did an average of all the prediction, and it's 17 years. So UPS's view is 17 years. And I said, what happened in 17 years? He said, 17 years, we get to level 5, but I still see a guardian angel sitting in a truck. I said, why do you need a guardian angel sitting in a truck? He said, because the cost of safety is so high. One accident by a self-driving truck versus a driven truck, can completely kill UPS or the entire sort of a user base, right? Yeah. So he believes for the next 15 to 20 years, even after 17 years, you will need a guardian angel, right? For example, rail and airlines and everything still needs guardian angels. These are more advanced technologies. Then I healthily joked with him, just one point. I healthily joked with him. You can't make the life of this guardian angel a 37th cost. You can't have him drive all the way, sit all the way from Chicago to San Francisco, like just doing nothing. It's even worse than driving a truck. So you got a relay technology fitted into autonomous vehicles so that you can do this, manage this whole, getting trucks to the highway and then changing on things. So I do believe, with all due respect, I think the relay technology will fit in very well to autonomous vehicle technology.
Your company will still be in business. That's what you think. I want to say something just about predictions. And prediction. If you look at prediction in the past, often they were not correct. And actually, you were McKinsey before. There's a famous one by McKinsey. Most of you probably know that by the year 2000, there was a famous report that came out and said, by the year 2000, we might have, I think, 900,000 mobile phones. And it was just off by 2 orders of magnitude. But I think that happens a lot. And I'll tell you a little story. I will not mention the names. There are 2 great colleagues at MIT. They're professors in economics. They've been writing great papers. And just less than 10 years ago, they did a paper where we're looking at, what are the jobs that might disappear because of technology. And they looked at all the jobs that are threatened by technology, but they say some jobs will not be threatened. And that was less than 10 years ago. And say one of the jobs they mentioned was drivers. Now we know that actually drivers will be some of the jobs that will disappear for sure. With self-driving, the question is it going to be 3 years or a few years, as you say? Is it going to be 17 years, as you say? But they're going to disappear soon. So I think technology has been moving so fast. The thing we couldn't predict actually have happened and are already on the road. On this, I would say let's use this in a more participatory way. If there's any question, yes. 3 hands already. Yes, wonderful. 4 hands, 5 hands. 5. Okay, let's do a round of questions from the room, and then we continue the conversation. Why don't you start?
Ciao, Caro. Anshuman, I like.
Actually, do we have a microphone? Because yeah.
Okay, so 2 points in here. My name is Anshuman Tripathi, and I'll talk about my specialization, which will become pretty apparent right now. On the predictions part and on Jan, I wanted to put the things together, whether the cars are running on gasoline, is running on diesel, or is running on electricity, or is running on nuclear power. If you're stuck in the traffic jam coming to GES, you're stuck. So looking at the way we're jumping up technologies, my company and my work that I do, and also otherwise, I specialize in cars which fly. And for those who might not know, there are about 17 companies in the world which are making flying cars, including a company called Zero, which is run by the founder of Google, Larry Page. So those are technologies which I see which are coming in. In fact, even Dubai has opened up its airspace to EHAN, I think it's 142 or 146, that thing. So how do you see that coming in more? Because I see the technology is there, but the regulations are not there. So
yeah, great question. Actually, our session is about the Jetsons, so I think we'll get to that in a moment. Let's get another question. So,
thank you. Suhail Al-Ghusaybi from Bahrain. So, us in the Gulf, we are obviously very concerned about the end of the oil era, and you can imagine where we stand on that. My question maybe to Jan. People talk about a lot about lithium-ion batteries, and that they say there's not enough lithium in the world to actually run all these cars. If you're going to electrify, how are you going to do it without enough raw material? Is that true? Is that not true? And can a plane take off on batteries? Because it's easy to talk about cars that have a 200-mile range, but can you make a plane, a jet engine, a jet airliner take off from, say, Bahrain to London on batteries? This is what I think really is we should be talking about.
Great, thanks all for asking. I think you're hoping that the answer is no, but we'll get to that in a moment. I think 2 more hands. One here. It's on.
Hi, I'm Mithun. I'm the CEO of Blowhorn. I run a logistics transportation startup. So essentially for me, the question is for the entire panel. So is self-drive and automation driven more by processing power? Is the constraint regulation or the infrastructure, or is the constraint processing power? If the constraint is processing power, in terms of visual computing and figuring out what obstacles we have, are we underestimating the advent of autonomous vehicles in class 4, class 5?
Great, thanks a lot. Final question, and then we'll have another round later. So maybe, yeah, we'll have another round of questions.
It's Anjul here, CEO of Central Business Solutions. So actually there is another curveball that I want to throw. How about do you think the technology on the autonomous vehicle will be just by itself, or procuring, let's say, the autonomous vehicle, especially on this shipping and logistics side, will it be a combination of drones and the the autonomous? Because I think if you look at the overall logistics, and I do come from the city where Tesla was born, actually. Yeah. I myself own a Tesla. My thing is that, there will be...
When you say the city, where Tesla the
Fremont.
Company, or the real Tesla?
Tesla, the company, Fremont.
Okay, yeah.
Fremont, California. So I personally see that it's probably going to be a combination of autonomous and drone with the solar involved in it. It's not going to be one single solution. But I would like to get your opinion about it.
Another thing about flying and drones, so we'll get to that, but I would suggest that we start talking first, let's continue on the self-driving first. So is the key bottleneck today processing power? What do you think? Or what is the key bottleneck? You were saying it's regulation, but from a technology point of view, is it processing power?
Of course, there will be still improvements, and there is this famous law that every some years you have doubling on the processing power, and that is still somehow true because we are not yet on the atomic level. Yeah, so there will be still improvement. Is it currently already the limit? No. for this question on autonomous driving, I'm speaking now not about level 5. Yeah? Here it's more about the regulation. So the boundary conditions are not set, even not in Europe, to have clarity as to how to respond to make driving really safe in that simple and very well quoted case that does the car decide where to hit the, let's say, other car or going towards a passenger. Yeah?
I would say that is beyond regulation probably. I mean, the key thing is that if you are a human, you make moral decisions. And the famous thing morally is the so-called trolley problem. Is some of you might know it. Probably there's not enough time probably to review it now, but the question is, how will the car do it? And ethics usually is not something you can code so easily. If we could code ethics very easily, we wouldn't need judges or lawyers. The reason is that you need to make a broader judgment, which is difficult to code in a self-driving car. But what do you think, Deepak, about this point?
So I think
what's the bottleneck?
No, it's a combination. I'll tell you. So Moore's law, by the way, does not hold now, right? It's not the computing power is not doubling every 2 years. It's probably doubling in 3 or 4 years. But I think we are very close to that point where computing processing power is not a problem. But we still do not have the data that we need. We still do not have the data that we need, right? I think we need a lot more data to code ethics. We need a lot more data to code that human level of decision making on the road. And that's why, we are far in terms of not in time, but at least in terms of data, to get to a very highly safer as in more than humans level of safety standards of decision making on autonomous vehicles. So I think it's a combination. My sense is computing will get solved, but my sense is we still need a lot of data, right?
All right. So the second question, I think we want to reassure or scare our friend in the Gulf. And I think they got the right to probably be scared today because the cost per megawatt hour produced for the first time in human history over the past 12 months went down to less than $25 per megawatt hour. And that happened in Mexico, in South America, and also in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. Now, when you got $25 per megawatt hour, that's cheaper than almost any other energy source. Just to give you a reference, if you take 1.6 megawatt hour, means a barrel of oil. But then if you got a barrel of oil, that means, if you do the calculation, it means that oil will not be, if, of course, you can have spikes because of little supply and demand mismatches. But apart from that, in the longer term, it means you shouldn't have oil more than $35, $40 per barrel. And also, as you know, it's much easier to use a megawatt hour where you can run with much higher efficiency an electric engine than actually to use oil. And if you use it in your car, you only use like 30 or 40% of that energy. So somehow, that's something could be. To me, it seems to me something very nice because we move to renewable energy sources, but for countries who produce a lot of oil and actually need to balance their government budgets could be an issue. And your question in particular was, well, okay, that is all good, or maybe let's say that is a given, but what about batteries? Do we have enough lithium? And what about planes? Because still we need planes and so on. Anybody would like to address this?
So, I think we're far too long used only resources under the earth to create fire and energy, right? We started using wood and then coal and then oil and now lithium, right? But I think we are very close to a point where humanity has understood that there is this big source of energy, which is the sun, available, and we have learned how to convert that source of energy into power at a cheaper rate than pulling resources out of earth and converting it into power. I think that's fundamentally and we are very near that tipping point where we'll not need to pull resources and we'll be able to use that solar power, right? I think the second point is how much can
but let me say, I think the question was, you need to have batteries, and for batteries you need to have lithium. Yeah. So is there enough lithium on the planet?
Yeah, but I'm saying that doesn't matter because I think solar energy storage and conversion will overtake, the need of using resources on the earth, right, and digging out resources on the earth, whether it is lithium or coal or oil.
But the point is that unless you have lithium, if you need lithium for batteries, even if you go solar, but you cannot store it, then you might not use it as easily as you can use oil. What is your view?
Yeah. So I would like to first give a, let's say, more or less precise answer to your question and then elaborate on your point a little. The question on the lithium, is there enough lithium? the public opinions are differing there, but all over, lithium seems not to be the problem. It's more on the cobalt side, where it's a matter of concern for the resources. Having said that, on your question, I will not take the plane now, I will take the ship. I had a nice discussion with a shipbuilder, and he was saying, now look, it's absolutely no problem to have a ship cruising on the ocean fully equipped with batteries. Technically, that's possible. The only matter is it will sink immediately. Yeah? So there are areas of transport that are simply not addressable with a question of any kind of battery technology. It's just getting too heavy, very simple. On that other point on the sun, here, Deepak, you are fully right, and my view is how to resolve that matter not only for new technology that is just coming into the market, but also for existing technology, be it planes, be it ships, be it cars. That's the point on electric fuels, so synthetic fuels. And if I look to Bahrain, you have a lot of sun, beautiful, so you can pave the whole, let's say, border and beyond that on the seaside with solar panels and create electricity out of that to do H2, so hydrogen, yeah, out of water with electrolysis.
And actually, hydrogen for for planes is something that's been explored and it seems to be possibly is most likely, because when you are on a plane, you want a very high energy density, and clearly batteries today still don't have that energy density, so you need so much more weight in on a plane or on a ship that could sink the ship or crash the plane. But now, as we are talking about planes, then I think there's something that I'm sure everybody would be passionate about, and probably that's why all of you are here, because the name of the session was about Meet George Jetson, and so it's about drones. And here I will take the first stab about answering that question, because I did an op-ed in a few newspapers just a few weeks ago, and which is about drones. And I'll tell you my view. I think we've been passionate about drones forever. If you look at a great movie called Metropolis in the 1930s by Fritz Lang, it depicts a city of the future at the time, full of these kind of flying objects moving people around. It is true that drones have democratized and made much simpler to make a flying object. And the reason is that a helicopter is very difficult because you need to change inclination of the blades, you need to compensate the torque that you get between the engine. But so it's very difficult to mount and very expensive. But if you do a drone, it's very simple. 4 propellers, you control them with a simple car, so it's very easy to make a drone. And that is what is make us dream that tomorrow everybody can move by drone. But I will tell you my view, and I would like everybody then to jump in and disprove this. And I'll put it in a slightly polemical way. I don't think that will work in cities. It can work in Africa if you move things around where there's no infrastructure. It can work for very lightweight things that do sensing or carry a camera or so on. But in cities, it's just physics. Just pure physics means that if you want to take a weight and keep the weight up in midair, you need to use so much energy just to stay there. And you produce so much downward wind and so much noise from that thing. And the reason is just physics. And just to give you an example, there's a helipad in Manhattan where there's a few tens of flights taking off every hour. And everybody's complaining. Again, just because of physics, because of the noise, because of the air, and so on. And sometimes, some of those will fall down, like it happened in Manhattan, and they had to shut down a lot of helipads in the middle of the city, because it's, if you've got many of them, there will always be some crashes and so on. So if you take it into account, those are a few tens per hour. But if you wanted to have an impact over all of Manhattan, you would need tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of flights taking off every hour. And that will make the life in the city totally impossible. So I think they certainly have a big role to play as small objects. They have a big role to play maybe in the middle of the desert or in Africa where you don't have enough infrastructure. But I honestly don't see them as the future of urban mobility. But I'm sure many people would disagree, and I would like to start by asking the panel if they disagree with my statement, and then everybody else in the room.
Would like to start?
Yeah. No, so Carlo, I'm more benign on the future in terms of technological future, right? In the sense that I do see drones, and I do see a mix of drones and autonomous vehicles and a lot of other technologies. But I think the bigger curveball could actually be 3D printing. I would ask why would you need to transport goods at all? Why can't you produce goods where they are consumed? See, any transportation of goods needs energy and therefore a waste of sort of resources. I mean, can't you just, and I could think that, I saw this prototype.
We cannot yet 3D print tomatoes, but I think,
But I think there is a lot of work happening in Valley where the vertical farming and
you cannot, but you cannot 3D print a Chateau Margaux from France.
not right now. Like the way you can't drone everything right now, you can't produce.
Okay, but we got your point. What about you, Jan? And then we'll open to the floor.
I think drones will play an important role, but they will still remain for a very long time in a niche product area. Yeah? So if you take the example here from Dubai, Volocopter is a company, they had their Virgin flight in September this year, and it's an unmanned drone for taxi. And of course that can happen because you jump from one skyscraper to the other. But having it like in Jetson city, where these are just like flying saucers around, this will most probably not happen.
Okay, my panelists are very political, so they don't want to, they're balancing, but I've seen a few hands, so why don't you start? About the drones, let's hear a few comments from the room. Feel free to disagree or agree strongly as you wish.
Hi, I'm Nicholas, so I'm the co-founder of Unmanned Life. So we do software to enable fleets of autonomous drones to perform different activities. And I agree with you, Carlo, it will be more in the mountains, right? More for delivery in remote areas, not in the cities.
Okay. I've seen some other hands. We'll get back to you. I mean, you clearly have a conflict of interest, but we'll get you started a conversation. We'll get back to you. I've seen another hand down there.
My name is Ashwini. I'm the co-founder for an IoT company called Zirab, and we are into retrofit of devices for driver behavior analysis and vehicle health monitoring. Our product is vehicle black box, so it works similarly like a flight black box. But my question is for the Bosch and for Revigo. So. Considering, I heard there was a project that Bosch has taken for Germany in 2010 and implemented around 12-13.
But can I just say, let's finish the conversation about drones, and then we have another round of questions. Is it about drone, your question?
No, it's automobiles.
So let's continue just for a moment about drones, because I saw a few hands, and then we look at, we go back to autonomy and so on. So I think 3 hands here.
So regarding the drone, just continue the same thing what I mentioned. So let's take different approach to different, why I say the combination.
Yeah.
So what really works in Manhattan? Manhattan, the delivery boys, so, if you need to send a document from one building to another building, I have, clients there in Manhattan. It's actually the physical delivery boy that's the fastest way to get in there. There's nothing else that works. No vehicle, no nothing can get you there. So there are like delivery boys who will just send the document. Between the offices, that's what works. In mountains, I think drones will be ideal. When we talk about autonomous, we all know that from 60s, planes have always been autonomous, right? I mean, they have been like, pretty much, auto landing, even like auto taking off and autopilot. So I don't see a big issue in making the vehicles autonomous, because there is a finite number of decisions one has to take basically to drive, right?
Are you talking about the vehicles on the ground now?
Yeah, vehicles on the ground. So all I'm saying is that when we talk about drones, as long as the safety regulation and all that is not a constraint, drone is an excellent example, and as what he has mentioned, where we have the issue of drivers and all these others, right? Why do you want to make a vehicle autonomous? You just put a robot, right, who has a more processing power, and there is a finite number of decisions a driver has to take anyways, right? But otherwise, one cannot drive if you have infinite number of decisions to be taken, right? So you put that in so it's going to be a combination, and that's what I see as the future.
Good point. Okay, so a few more hands about drones. One here, then very quickly, then 2 more and another one.
Yeah, hello, my name is Sarah Wittlieb and I'm in charge of innovation management at Munich Airport. And for us, we have a lot of cooperation with startup companies, also with corporate companies in terms of drones. And actually for us at the moment, there are a lot of startups who want to cooperate. But for us, of course, because of security and safety, this is, of course, very, very important to keep that safe. So what do you think about the effects of the drones for the security and safety of the whole aviation industry?
Yeah. Well, thanks for making that point. So if I understand, the point is you cannot scale up too much because then, at least with today's technology, it becomes difficult to keep the safety. And again, if you were to put hundreds of thousands of drones in the air in a big city, probably you'll have, today's technology will have difficulties in managing all of those fleets without collisions. But a few more comments.
Sure. I'm Mithun. So basically, I think there are two classes. One is the wheeled autonomous vehicles which go on the ground, and there's a class of vehicles which fly above. Both are autonomous.
Yeah.
Autonomous drones will have an application in local applications, very local applications where speed is the priority. Where payload is the priority, you'll have wheeled applications going on the ground.
Okay.
So I think both of these will coexist at the same time.
Okay, point very clear. One hand down there and another one down there.
Yeah, hi. I have a question regarding why do you think that air taxis, which are like person-carrying drones, will not see the future very quickly? The question is really because if there are regulated flight paths for drones that we've seen a lot of companies are working on, it'll solve the security issues that are there, and then you can have these in a much more cost-efficient way. So why would you think that it won't exist very fast?
Okay.
Sure, great point. Let's.
Hello. Yeah, my question is about energy density. From my limited knowledge, I think that batteries are a huge issue in drones because of the bulkiness and the weight. So wouldn't it be a better idea, especially for manned, air taxis, to start thinking more about liquid fuels or fuel cells or something in those lines?
Great. Yeah, great point. So maybe one comment here, and then.
I just want to answer on that because thank you. I'm also a member of the European Union group on drones, so we're working on the drone regulation. So that's why I was quoting the mountain use case. On the battery, a drone can carry batteries up to 5-10 kilos, so it's not a problem.
But hold on, you're saying not 5-10 kilos, but if you want to have a big drone carrying people, a taxi drone.
But that's marketing, right? That's pure marketing. Yes, but it's marketing. It's not that you won't see that in the next 10-15 years.
So your point is that a taxi drones will not happen in 10-15. So I think some of us who believe.
Amazon, sorry to finish. Amazon delivery is also marketing. If you see when it was published, it was always published before the big e-commerce season was started. I think it was Black Friday. Just check that data. So it's always for marketing purpose.
All right, so we got different views in the room, and actually now we'll wrap up this. So some of us who thought here we'll get the view for the future, and we'll all be George Jetson and moving our cities like he did. Then we've heard a few challenges about energy density, about the control, about collisions and so on. But certainly drones have a role to play, and that's what many people are saying. I think you started all the conversation about drones, so I'd like to give you the last word on this. Clearly, you got you need to declare your interest.
So I live in Palo Alto, California, and last year I ran the MIT Stanford similar event for flying cars, and I got the startup founders for a bunch of the companies like Zero and all onto this. I would like to bring to Uber Elevate there was a conference on just flying cars. Uber has put together a lot of data from all their work, and they came up with the concept that to fly, we just require only about 20 minutes of flight to get through traffic congestions. And so yes, I agree with the people that the batteries don't work. So people are looking at combinations on batteries and gasoline-powered drones, and Airbus is looking at one called Vahana, and they are all working on the same thing. That I agree that it's a concept which is evolving, a lot of things which have to be done, but rooftop to rooftop kind of a thing is what is being envisaged. That's what Uber prefers would come up. So I think the future is all open, and the Jetsons are coming in. Just a matter of time that they would come in.
Okay, thank you for allowing us to keep on dreaming about one day being George Jetsons. And I think we got 10-15 minutes remaining for the session. So I would say we had some other questions also more general again about autonomy and so on. I would put an additional thing on the table that maybe to look at this issue we've heard. It seems to me there's three components. There's the data component. We heard about what Deepak is doing primarily. There's also the vehicle improvement, how to make the vehicle more efficient, how to electrify the vehicle, do self-driving. And also there's a physical infrastructure. We probably don't need to totally transform the physical infrastructure. Some of the digital can compensate for the physical, but in India probably that also requires some effort and some improvement in some parts of the country. So I would suggest we use this as a lens to talk about in the remaining 10-15 minutes. Any comments from the floor? For instance, yes, you had quite a few hands. We can start over there.
Yeah, hi. So my name is Dave Roberts, Chief Innovation Officer for the state of Indiana. And for 2.5 years before I took this post, I ran the Battery Innovation Center, a public-private partnership. And from my perspective, the energy density issue is not an issue. We saw many technologies that were silicon doping, sulfur-based batteries. The technology is going to increase. Just recently, we had tested a specific chemistry that had energy density on par with fossil fuels. So at the chemistry level, not packaged. So I don't think the battery is the issue. I think the issue is what you've just touched on, the assumption that we have a resilient grid, the assumption that we have 5G and better communication schemes coming. It's the infrastructure, I think, that's really the holdup.
And I mean, we cannot hear very well, but you say, the energy density will not the issue, technology will improve. Are you thinking about solid-state batteries when you're looking at this? The example you made about density on par with fossil fuels. That's
yeah, solid-state batteries offer a lot of promise. I mean, chemistries are developing every day that are going to advance well beyond where we are today, beyond lead acids.
Cool. Great point. We had a few hands here in the middle.
Hi, I'm not actually in the industry, so I have kind of a large-scale bird's-eye view question. Besides physical road infrastructure, what do you think is maybe the second most important public sector type of investment that needs to be made? I've heard allusions to the grid, obviously, if you're thinking about autonomous cars, but I'm curious for other kind of large-scale investments that the government may need to make in terms of infrastructure that are important to moving goods and commerce across, kind of large distances.
Great question. Somebody else?
My name is Ryan Croft. I'm co-founder of Transit Screen, DC-based mobility startup. My question relates more to autonomous vehicles and real estate. So I'm curious, what kind of impact do you think, if we're looking at urbanization speeding up, people want to live in cities, what effect will the future of autonomous vehicles have on real estate? Will people live further out in the suburbs, or will it increase density?
Great question as well. I saw, one more hand there.
Hi, I'm Prabha, and I'm from Intel, and I am part of the autonomous driving group. Very interesting perspectives that we got here. One question I wanted to ask specifically is, what's your view on how the business models will translate when we get autonomous driving? Right now, if you see the standard, automotive industry is very specifically OEM based and the pretty clear walled gardens with tiers of suppliers, and I'm sure many of the folks that are in the industry know about it. I expect that could be transformed, and I wanted to hear your views about that.
Great, thanks. A great question as well. So maybe what we can do, ask the panelists, maybe we can start with the one about, physical road infrastructure, but what next? What is the other key thing that governments should invest in? Ian.
So infrastructure with regards to autonomous driving is my understanding was the main question. And here it is starting with very, very simple things, specifically for India, that you have a clear lane. Yeah? It's very simple, apparently, but it's a big obstacle if you want to really have autonomous driving. You have to see the lane. Yeah? No matter whether it's now video, stereo video, whether it's a radar, whether it's a LiDAR system, so you have to see this. Beyond that, you have to develop across the city specifically a net of eyes and sensors. Yeah? So these are elements in order to really make autonomous driving, I speak of a level 5 now,
but yeah, I want to say you're assuming that in order to do this, we actually need to, we need to turn the Indian infrastructure into a way that, it is, basically we're changing the infrastructure to have a car which is trained on the US highway to be able to drive here. But don't you think, with the progress we've seen with deep learning and artificial intelligence, couldn't you think about a system where actually Indian autonomous cars can keep on running the way, the people go on this road here, which is very interesting. When I've been driving in India, you use a different set of rules, which is much more adaptive. You got, my impression to do that is use the space in a much more efficient way with very different rules than what you use in, say, in California. What do you think? I mean, shouldn't we develop, instead of changing the infrastructure, can we think about a very intelligent self-driving car, which is like the best Indian driver today, is able to slalom through traffic?
Absolutely. I might sound a little biased, living in Bangalore, or I just missed the vision here for that. But that is not about the infrastructure then, but that is about cars talking to cars, which is again a huge personal investment to be taken beyond the technology.
And by the way, their self-driving car will also use the horn in a different way. The thing here is to express joy and other things. So I think that could be a new programming of the car. But what do you think, Deepak, about that question?
I have two ideas, and I'll combine the question which the gentleman asked on decongestion of the roads for autonomous vehicles to work. Right? I think one is we don't want urbanization. I think the smart cities was an idea of last decade. The idea of the future is smart villages. We want people to stay where they are, find food, economy where they are. We don't want like busier and congested cities anymore, right? We want to give opportunity to people to stay where they are and bring that world to them. For example, like our relay truckers stay in the villages where they are. We don't transport them to Delhi or Bombay or Bangalore, right? They stay in the villages. So we need to create smart villages. Look at what happened in China with this whole urbanization. Look at what happened, someone said we can't create the cities which US did. We'll need 3 planets to create cities if we were to India to create cities which, US did. Bulky, mega cities, we can't create that. I think that's one, which is decongest this thing. Second idea is,
Deepak, where do you live right now?
Gurgaon, and I hate it.
Where, sorry? Yeah?
Gurgaon. I hate it.
Why? It's too big?
No, it's just, I don't like it. It's polluted, it's congested, I don't like it. I want to stay in the hills with clean air, fresh air, oxygen, more oxygen, right? And still have the same sort of luxury which I have in Gurgaon, right?
Well, I think that's a good question. Maybe we can look at this as it relates to the other question we heard about self-driving.
Sorry, second idea.
Yes, let me just say for people to think about is about, still the city is a place of opportunities. Yes, if you're in New York City, again, it's super expensive. Quality of life can be really, really bad, and so on. But people go there because it's people who attract other people, and so that is why we congregate in such big cities. But I think maybe we can hear about it. We can close on that in a moment with the last round of questions.
So second idea is, if you have to solve for cities, you got to think about what I call as relay economy, which is, can everything run for 24/7? Today, the city roads are empty for 16 hours in the day, while they are congested for 6 hours or 8 hours in the day, but they are empty for 16 hours in the day. How can you have your courtrooms, educational institutes, health, everything run 24/7? So you can, with the same infrastructure, you can actually, decongest to a certain extent. Otherwise, I don't think we can create in those micro environments the kind of road infrastructure which someone spoke about. I think those are the two simple ideas.
That's a great point, and certainly the infrastructure in the 20th century was very inefficient, designed around peaks. If you smoothen the peaks, you can use it. You can use it better. We had two additional questions. One was about the business model. So, what maybe Jan, what do you think about the business models? Especially you come from a very consolidated industry and working a lot with the automotive industry, with the OEMs. Do you think they will win tomorrow in this world? I think the question was about whether the new business model will be more the Googles or the Uber who will take over, and everything else will be commoditized.
Yeah, so that is it's a great question, and it's of course something that is occupying the minds of the industry a lot. Yeah? And I don't speak about taxis now, because that is very far future. But I speak about shared mobility, and not sharing the mobility just as a device for coming to A to B, but using mobility as a service. Just to give one example, again, this big German OEM that is offering very small cars as well. He has a pick and drop solution for specifically his e-vehicles now. So they are using this car as a post box, if you will. So you can drop your package in that car and you own that car. So we have a Uberization of the transport system beyond the question of bringing persons from A to B. And these are business models where the industry is thinking about. Again, it's not any longer about the product that you sell, because that you can just sell one time. Or maybe with the aftermarket, that is, by the way, shrinking the more electrification we get in, you'd sell the second time. But to create revenue models that are going on a service side.
Cool. What do you think, Deepak?
No, I think it's a very scary future.
Why scary?
We are going towards a world where few companies will wield all the power, right? All data and technology will lead to ecosystems, right? Which is what you said, Google or Uber or Amazon or whatever, right? So I read a recent research around world converging into 12 ecosystems. Again, it was very precise, and they actually highlighted what those 12 ecosystems could be. So unless we figure out a better way around materialistic capitalism, I think we are leading to a very scary future where we'll have to have universal basic income and these 12, 13, 14, 15 companies sort of owning all the wealth.
Okay, but Deepak, we got 3 more minutes in order to turn onto a more optimist note. And after all, here we got basically American optimism and India and creativity coming together.
Yeah.
So I think the last question we had was about what is going to happen to cities. And it relates to your point, is about the village or the city, or as we heard in the question, is about if you got autonomous cars, are we going to see bigger and bigger cities, so more and more suburbia? We all know that in the 20th century, suburbia was created by the automobile. Exurbia, these kind of infinite suburbs around American cities and all over the world. And what is going to happen with self-driving? And I'll take a first stab at that question. It seems to me that, there's two forces. The key thing about self-driving is that you can share better the car. Today, the car is very inefficient. 95% unused, 5% used. So if you've got a self-driving that you can keep on using, the key thing is that you can use the infrastructure better. It can be cheaper, more sustainable, and so on. But sharing requires density. So that's a force that will bring us into denser cities. At the same time, you can also think about a self-driving car that becomes like an extension of your home. So it becomes a self-driving car where you can sleep, where you can do work, where you do many things. It's like a moving room. And then it doesn't matter if you commute for 3 hours, you can keep on working, doing things, or sleeping. So you can also live even further away from the center. And I think we'll have to see how those two things combine, and also how policies will be put in place. For instance, taxation on the infrastructure, like what Singapore is doing, is probably going to be the next source of revenue. As soon as revenue from private vehicles and oil dries up for governments, then that's going to be. And so if you could put taxation on the road infrastructure, that will also be one way to keep our cities more compact. But maybe we can finish on this by hearing from the room, and seeing about the more profound question that you raise is about the village or is about the city. And since cities started, we didn't have cities. 10,000 years ago, we didn't have cities. And then humanity we discover this beautiful system that brings us together in order to exchange ideas, in order to exchange chromosomes, to come together in different ways. And that's really cities that attract people, and people then attract other people. And I think that's why we've seen cities of all sizes, and that's why we're still drawn to big cities. Even there, we got a lot of negative things. It's very expensive, a lot of congestion, and so on and so forth. But so I think maybe we can finish with this and see, how do you see the future? Is our future, the global village, a lot of small villages, or is the future of even bigger megalopolises, or is going to continue like this with a bit of all, in the distribution, and some people living one way or the other way? First, maybe first the room. Any thoughts on this topic? Yes.
My thoughts are that we will need village-like cities, meaning villages or cities where you can walk places, you can bike places, you can take easy public transport, trams, hanging trams, things like that. But we need it to be walkable and easy to use, and I think that's the future that we need, closer to Germany than, say, what we see in Hyderabad, where you can't even walk 100 meters. It's the same thing in Riyadh. In Manama, you can hardly walk anywhere, and you can't take your bicycle.
Great point. So the future is German. Any other comments from the room? Yes.
I think in terms of mobility of people within cities, which causes most congestion, we are looking at rush hour mostly, and people moving to work. We are looking at a completely wrong technology paradigm when we are discussing mobility. We shouldn't be discussing this in the light of autonomous vehicles, but virtual reality. Just now I came from the Oculus group here, just had a demo there. And next time they'll show me a demo of virtual reality conferencing. Telepresence has been spoken about for 10 to 15 years. Do people really need to leave their houses?
It's a very good question, but I should note that you came here instead of watching the streaming that you could have watched from this conference room. So I believe probably there's still something by which you want to be together next to each other in physical space. 2 more points. I saw 2 hands. Okay. Oh no, 1 here and 1 there. And then we need to wrap up because the session is over. So.
We have about 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay.
Yeah.
I echo with the gentleman from Saudi. I think it has to be equitable growth, so smart cities are the way. You cannot have somebody enjoying the benefits of technology while leaving out a large chunk of population that resides in smaller towns.
Right. So you're for the big cities side and
equitable smart cities.
And 2 more comments down in the back. The big smart city. Yes.
Yeah, I'm also in the view that we should shift towards big cities, but specifically for cities with bigger skyscrapers. So on the ground level, you can walk around from building to building. And once you're in a building, I think elevators are a very efficient form of transportation. And I feel that economically, by concentrating more people in a given infrastructure, you're using your resources more efficiently rather than spreading it out into villages.
Very interesting point. The next thing I want to mention today, we didn't talk about elevators. It's another thing about mobility. But you might be interested to know that elevator space is going to be totally transformed by a new kind of technology which allows many elevators to be in the same shaft and also to move in not just vertically but also diagonally. And that's a new technology that's coming out, and it probably will transform the way we think about high-rise buildings and will allow us to really think about new morphologies in our cities. I think I saw another hand down there.
Hi, my name is Michael Trez, and I'm with Xylec Technologies, a logistic company. One of the problems is it's also a mindset of people. We all become happy with Uber and Ula, how they deploy vehicles, which is to meet our need. We want a car right now. So how Uber and Ula solves that problem is that they have to have many cars close to you so that your appetite of having the car now is there. Now that needs to change where you plan ahead so that I don't need 1 car to satisfy. I don't need 5 cars to satisfy 1 person, but I need 1 car to satisfy 5 persons if I know ahead of time the requirement for how to deploy my fleet to pick up, and that's the problem we're solving.
It's a very interesting point, even if perhaps human nature is such that planning ahead or having something we tend to move to the direction of having something that is there when we need it, and that planning ahead is sometimes is not so ingrained in human nature. But I would like to ask the two panelists actually for a final comment based on all of this. And so, is it going to be, bigger cities, smaller cities? How are we going to live tomorrow? Just a final word.
We need to be able to use technologies to give the same life experience to a family living in the village. Whether it is connecting with like-minded people through social networks, whether it is bringing cheap resources there, whether it is creating employment there, right? Giving all that, whether using virtual reality to give sort of more experiences to that person there. I think if we do that as humanity, we'd be creating a much better ecosystem than putting so much load on such micro areas on the planet using. And I think we'll need a more technological horsepower, by the way, to solve for cities than to bring the same life experience to people living in villages. So if I were to invest and I was government, I'd invest in bringing the same life experience to people living in villages.
Okay, well, thank you, Deepak, and let me thank all of you. I think this was really an exciting conversation. We've heard many different points of view. Also here all the way to the end about big cities, think about bigger and bigger cities, or think about more like villages, and also all of you who came with the dream of George Jetson. You can still dream about it. I think we haven't dispelled the dream, and so please join me to thank the panelists and all of you for an exciting session.